Is someone there? Is someone there? Mary?
The sun bled orange across the sky as the train shrieked to a halt on the forgotten tracks of Hollow Bluff. A hiss of steam rose, then silence, thick and absolute. One woman stepped down, just one, her boots meeting the dirt with hesitation. She stood still a moment, clutching a small carpet bag and a folded letter trembling in her gloved hands. Her name was Clara Quinn, and she'd traveled over 700 miles to marry a man she'd never met. Her powder blue travel dress, now dulled by soot and dust, clung to her narrow frame. A bonnet shaded her freckled face, but not the worry in her eyes. Clara turned slowly, scanning the empty town. Not a single soul waited on the platform. No horse tied to the hitching post. No one tipping his hat and calling her name. Just the wind. She unfolded the letter again, her fingers brushing the dried ink as though it might warm her somehow. Dearest Clara, I await you with great anticipation. When the train arrives, come directly to the general store. I'll find you there. Yours, Matthew. The general store sat across the dirt street, but its windows were dark. One of the shutters hung loose, banging lazily in the wind. Clara crossed the street, her heels crunching over gravel. The door was locked. She knocked. Waited. Knocked again. No answer. She turned, eyes sweeping the buildings, a row of dusty wooden facades with their paint long peeled away by the sun and years. A saloon. A livery. A chapel. All empty. All silent. Hollow Bluff lived up to its name. Hello. Clara called, voice barely more than a whisper. Is anyone here? No reply. She tried the saloon next. The batwing doors creaked as she pushed them open. Inside, cobwebs clung to the corners, and broken glass glittered on the floor like lost stars. A single chair lay tipped beside an overturned table. Her boots echoed on the warped floorboards as she backed out, the emptiness pressing in like a too-tight corset. With a mounting chill in her spine, Clara walked further down the main street, her hope wilting with every boarded window and rusted sign. She knocked on doors, peered through windows, waited, and waited. But no voice answered, no silhouette stirred. The town was dead. She returned to the platform, her carpetbag heavier now, her hands shaking. Dusk settled like a shroud. Coyotes howled in the distance, sharp, rising wails that felt too close. The train was gone, vanished into the darkness without a goodbye, and the whistle no longer echoed. Just the wind. Just the dust. Just her. She sat on the steps of the church, the one building that looked untouched by rot. Her breath came shallow. Tears welled up and spilled without sound. She'd come for a new life, for a man who had promised her belonging, maybe even love. But Hollow Bluff had swallowed him, the town, everything. She looked up at the sky. Stars blinked through thin clouds. The moon, pale and sharp, hovered like a blade. Her fingers tightened on the letter. Matthew, she whispered. Please. Where are you? Something stirred. A rustle. A shift of air behind her. She turned fast, but nothing moved. Then, clear and soft as lullaby breath, will you be my Mobby? The words floated just behind her ear. Clara froze. Every hair on her arm stood on end. Her breath caught in her throat, stuck between disbelief and terror. She whirled around, her eyes wide, searching the shadows. Nothing. No one. Who's there? She called, voice cracking. Silence. Her gaze darted to the church doors, slightly ajar now, though she hadn't opened them. A sound reached her ears then. Not wind. Not animal. It was the unmistakable, impossible patter of a child's footsteps. Light. Skipping. Inside the church. She stood slowly, clutching her bag like a shield. The doors creaked wider in invitation. Inside, shadows twisted and pulled. A single candle flickered at the altar, though she'd never seen it lit. A soft giggle echoed from within, followed by the sharp snap of a pew creaking under unseen weight. And Clara, trembling in the stillness of a town abandoned to time, knew she was not alone. I ain't afraid of little girls, Clara muttered, fingers curled tight around the rusted lantern handle. Not even dead ones. The flame inside the glass flickered, throwing pale gold light across the threshold of the church. She stood at the door a moment longer, the air thick with dust and something unspoken, Not quite fear, but not peace either. Her boots creaked on the old wood as she stepped inside, each echo trailing behind like a ghost with nowhere left to go. The scent hit her first, old cedar, candle wax, and something fainter underneath, like lilac gone sour. The pews stretched in perfect rows, half devoured by cobwebs, the cushions flattened and dry as old bones. But her lantern's glow caught something strange in the second row. Handprints, dozens of them, smeared in the dust. They were small. Too small. Clara stepped closer, the lantern quivering slightly in her grip. The tiny handprints, fingers spread wide, seemed pressed into the dust deliberately, as if the child had been playing, or marking territory. "Who are you?" she whispered. No reply, just a faint scratching sound behind the pulpit. Then, soft and hollow as breath over a grave, a music box began to play. The tune was fragile, childlike, something meant for rocking chairs and nighttime lullabies. But here, in the cracked silence of a long-abandoned chapel, it twisted, warped. Notes skipped. The rhythm dragged like something was wrong with the gears. Clara followed the sound, heart pounding louder with each step. Behind the pulpit, the lantern cast shadows that danced like mourners. On the floor lay a child's bonnet, pale blue, the lace yellowed with age. Beside it sat a porcelain doll, one glass eye cracked but the other gleaming in the lamplight. Its dress was trimmed in faded pink, and its arms were warm. Clara dropped it with a gasp. The warmth clung to her palms. She stepped back, breath shallow, then caught sight of something nailed to the wall behind the pulpit, a piece of torn parchment, curled at the corners. A child's drawing. The lines were jagged, messy, but the message was clear, a stick-figure family. A man with long arms and a black hat. A woman with a dress and yellow hair. And a little girl standing between them. But the girl's face was blank, just an empty circle where features should be. Beside the drawing, scrawled in shaky handwriting that cut through the page, was a single name. Mary. Clara's knees weakened. She steadied herself on the pulpit, then glanced to the old wooden lectern. A thick book rested there, the church's ledger. Its cover cracked as she opened it, dust rising like ash from a fire long dead. Page after page, names of births, baptisms, deaths. One name caught her eye, Matthew Calder, listed as both preacher and officiant in earlier entries. Then, his own death recorded in a trembling hand. October 3rd, 1879. 3 years ago. Clara's mouth went dry. That was the name on the letter. The man who'd promised to meet her. The man who signed, "Yours, Matthew." But he'd been dead longer than the ink had been dry. She turned slowly, every nerve in her body alert now. The church suddenly seemed colder. The walls leaned in closer. The candle at the altar sputtered. "You sent me the letter," she whispered, voice cracking. "But how?" The music box stuttered to a stop. Silence fell again, deeper than before. Clara knelt down and reached hesitantly for the doll. It lay still, one arm bent as if mid-embrace. She picked it up gently, brushing dust from its face. "Mary," she said aloud, and the word trembled through the air like a stone dropped in water. She clutched the doll to her chest. Her fingers traced the bonnet's lace, the way it was stitched by hand, by a mother, maybe. A real mother, not one summoned from hundreds of miles away with false promises and ink from beyond the grave. Something brushed her hand. Clara stiffened. Slowly, her gaze dropped to her side. A hand, impossibly small, impossibly cold, curled around hers. Pale fingers laced through hers, as if claiming her. She couldn't breathe. The lantern slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor. The light didn't go out. It rolled gently in a circle, casting spinning shadows on the walls. The hand squeezed, and from the darkness beside her came the softest of voices, barely a breath. "Mama. She ain't yours to claim." The voice scraped across the silence like a shovel on stone. Clara spun toward the graveyard fence, where a tall, rail-thin man leaned against a cracked post, head low, eyes hidden in shadow. His coat was sun-bleached and frayed, his boots caked in red dirt. In one hand, he held a rusted spade. The other clutched a bent pipe, unlit. "Who are you?" Clara asked, her voice raw, shaken still from what had happened inside the church. The man didn't answer at first. He simply watched her, not with hostility, but the wary caution of someone who'd buried too many things that wouldn't stay dead. "Name's Ezekiel March," he said finally. "Been digging this ground longer than God's had his eye off it." "You live here." "I don't live. I stay." There's a difference. He spat into the weeds and eyed the doll in Clara's hand. You carrying that thing around like it don't bite. Clara instinctively clutched the doll tighter, stepping away from the church steps. She came to me. She said, "Mary." Ezekiel's mouth twitched, not quite a frown. Course she did. She always does. Especially when the wind smells like Missouri. Clara blinked. How do you? I dug her grave, he said, interrupting. I dug all of him. The preacher. His wife. The girl. Every poor soul who thought Hollow Bluff was going to be a place to start something new. He nodded toward the church. It was the mine that did it. First, anyway. Back in '79, they hit gas. Boom near leveled the West Ridge. Killed 27 men in a breath. Clara stepped toward the fence, drawn despite herself. What about the preacher? Matthew called her. Ezekiel's jaw tightened. Didn't leave when the rest ran. Said God told him to stay. Said Hollow Bluff could still be saved. He was writing letters, Clara said. One came to me. Ezekiel barked a humorless laugh. He's been dead 3 years, ma'am. Unless you're in the habit of courting corpses. Clara's stomach turned, but she held her ground. He said to meet him. At the general store. Store's been closed since the fever came, Ezekiel muttered. Cholera. Swept through like a reaper on a wild horse. Took the women first. Then the children. Then most of the rest. His eyes, pale and rimmed red, finally met hers. Mary went quick. So did her mama. But Matthew, he kept seeing her. Talking to her. Said she was still around. Said she wanted her mama back. Clara's voice shook. You mean, she wasn't gone? She was buried. He tapped a spade on the ground. I put her there myself. But buried don't mean gone. Not in Hollow Bluff. A wind blew through the graveyard then, steering dry grass and lifting strands of Clara's hair. The heat of the day had vanished. Shadows stretched longer. You need to leave, Ezekiel said. Clara hesitated. I don't think I can. It's like the town, loops. I try to walk out, and I'm back where I started. Ezekiel didn't flinch. She's chosen you. Chosen me. She clings to the living. To women. To those looking for something. Love. Hope. A second chance. She smells it on you. And once she touches you. He gestured at the doll. It don't let go easy. Clara stared down at the toy. Its painted lips seemed to smirk. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. None of 'em did, Ezekiel said. The last woman who answered her call, young widow passing through, thought she could help. Slept in the parsonage. Said she heard lullabies in the walls. Next morning, I found her swinging from the bell tower rope. Eyes wide open. Clara's blood turned to ice. Why? She thought it had set the child free. He shrugged. Or maybe she just went mad. Clara looked up at the church steeple. The bell had long since rusted in place, but the tower still loomed high, framed by a ladder nailed into the back wall. She stepped behind a chapel, drawn by something heavy in her chest. But when she reached the ladder, she found the rung split and shattered, as if clawed apart. Something, or someone, hadn't wanted her to climb. That night, Clara returned to the parsonage. She hadn't meant to, but her feet carried her back like a tide drawn by the moon. The house smelled of old ash and forgotten linens. A single lamp burned low in the front room. She didn't remember lighting it. She sat in the wooden chair by the window, doll in her lap, and watched the street for hours. Nothing moved. No crickets. No owls. Not even the wind. When sleep finally came, it was like falling through water. Thick. Slow. She awoke to silence. The lamp had gone out. Shadows wrapped around the room like vines. The sheets were twisted around her legs. She blinked. Something was at the foot of the bed. Small. Still. A silhouette. Just the height of a child. Clara's heart thundered. Her mouth opened, but the air turned to ice in her throat. The little girl said nothing at first. Just stood there, head tilted, hair falling in tangles over her eyes. The moonlight slipped through the window, casting a soft halo around her, but her face remained hidden. Then she leaned forward slightly and whispered, "You smell like Mama." No child writes in blood, do they? Clara's voice trembled into the empty parsonage as she stared at the jagged lettering across the wooden floorboard. Red-brown, smeared like a desperate message. A single word, stay. The lantern's glow shook in her hands as she stepped back. Her heel caught on a loose plank, and it shifted with a hollow groan. The breath snagged in her lungs. She bent down, pried at the board, and found it loose, just enough to lift. Beneath it, nestled between cobwebs and brittle dust, lay a bundle of folded letters tied with black ribbon, old and fragile as dry leaves. She pulled them free. Her name was written on each in the same stiff script. Clara Quinn. She swallowed hard and opened the top letter. March 17th, 1880. Dearest Clara. Asterisk, I don't know if this will reach you, but I must try. I've seen her again, in the doorway last night. She stands with her bonnet in hand, but her face is wrong. It shifts, changes, smiles like something wearing my daughter's skin. I know I sound mad, but you must believe me. Asterisk. The ink blurred toward the bottom, smudged by moisture long since dried. Clara reached for the next letter. Then another. Then another. Each one grew more unhinged, more fevered. The name at the bottom never changed. Yours in hope, Matthew Calder. But Matthew was dead. Clara stared at the pile of letters, her fingers numb. They were all dated between 1880 and 1881, yet she'd received hers just weeks ago. How? By whom? She grabbed the most recent one. May 3rd, 1881. Asterisk Clara, if you ever come, do not stay overnight. Do not look into the mirror. And if you hear her voice, do not answer it. The church is no longer consecrated. God left this town with the miners. What's here now? Wears their names but not their souls. I see Mary every night. I see her mother. But they are not mine. They are something else. Asterisk. The letter dropped from Clara's hand like ash. She stumbled to her feet, mind racing. A noise behind her made her whip around. Ezekiel stood in the doorway, eyes ablaze. You opened them, he said, his voice low and furious. Clara backed away. They're mine. They're addressed to me. You weren't supposed to get those, he snapped, stepping forward. I burned them. Every damn one. Buried the ashes. Then how? She brought him back. He pointed a bony finger toward the ceiling. Same way she brought you. Same way she brings 'em all. She. Mary, Ezekiel growled. She wants a mama, but she don't understand what that means. She ain't a girl anymore. Ain't been in years. She's grief that learned how to talk. She's hunger in a child's voice. Clara's knees weakened. Why me? Because you wanted something, too, Ezekiel said bitterly. Something Hollow Bluff could twist. You were easy to call. Clara's throat tightened. Then help me leave. He looked at her with a mix of pity and anger. I told you, girl. You don't leave Hollow Bluff. Not once it takes a liking to you. But I tried, she said. Twice. I walked down the tracks, into the hills. I ended up back here both times. Yeah, Ezekiel muttered. That's how it starts. He stepped into the room, staring down at the letters. You got no idea what you've stirred up. She thinks you're hers now. I'm not, Clara said. Try telling her that. She glanced at the window. The daylight outside had turned gray and thick, as if dusk had come early. Clouds rolled low over the hills. The street outside lay empty, though the feeling of being watched had grown unbearable. Clara grabbed her bag. Then I'll try again. Ezekiel didn't stop her. He just watched her go with a hollow look, like a man who'd watched too many funerals and never dug a deep enough grave. Clara walked fast, head down, past the church and out toward the edge of town. Her feet kicked up dust as she crossed the ridge. She followed the trail north, where the sun should have been brighter. She walked for hours. The path curved, dipped, rose. She crossed a dry creek bed, passed the same leaning fence, kept going, until her breath caught in her throat. The town was in front of her again. Same slanted saloon sign. Same general store window cracked in the shape of a star. Clara collapsed to her knees. She hadn't turned once. She hadn't turned once. No, she whispered. Behind her, wind swept through the street, carrying with it the faint tinkle of a music box and a sound that didn't belong in the living world. A bell. One long, low chime. Then another. And another. Clara turned her head slowly toward the church. The bell tower, still broken, was ringing. Ringing. The air grew heavy. The very air seemed to hum with the sound, like the whole town had taken a single breath in. Then, soft and sweet, carried on the rising wind. You're mine now,